Hi everyone, this is Toprakci from PeakUp. We are here and I'm very glad to present you the first session of CodeRunner series. So we are basically talking about today's session in .NET Core and how AWS approach to the .NET technologies and .NET Core and what they are doing on AWS side and what we are doing on the PeakUp side. So we are here with the Emrah, Uslu, Fatih, Dogan and Anil Erduran from AWS. So let me just give me a quick introduction to everyone. So first, Emrah, could you please tell us about yourself?
Okay, my name is Emrah Uslu. I'm working for PeakUp more than 2 years. I'm the developer experience team's lead here. We develop IoT projects, chatbot projects, web-based projects here in PeakUp. And thank you for the CodeRunner series. I'm very happy to be here.
So we are here with Fatih. So Fatih are one of the greatest developers in here. So let me quickly brief yourself.
Hello, my name is Fatih. I'm working at PeakUp for about 6 years now, and one of the developers here. First, I guess that's about all.
Okay, it's a humble description, but he's one of the principal developers on our side. So, and Anil, you're on the other side of the phone. So, could you please describe yourself and what they are doing, and what's your history and background?
Hi guys. So, first of all, thanks for having me here today. I know that you guys are doing great stuff around .NET, so it's really a great pleasure to discuss .NET technologies with you guys. Quick introduction about myself. My name is Anil or Anil, and currently I'm working as a Microsoft Partner Solution Architect in AWS. So mainly I'm responsible for AWS partners in the EMEA region, but specifically when it comes to Microsoft technologies. So my day-to-day job is basically helping our partners to architect Microsoft solutions on top of AWS. So this could be anything such as Active Directory, Exchange Server, or any kind of .NET application. And you guys already know that AWS has been running Microsoft workloads for over 10 years, and they have customers all around the world running Microsoft workloads. So I'm responsible for any kind of Microsoft workload. And apart from this, I'm also working with our partners, just like today, for joint initiatives and activities. I'm helping them to deliver webcasts or workshops or such events for their customers. And my background for the last, I would say, 10 years is only around Microsoft workloads. I'm also an ex-MVP. I'm saying ex because I recently lost the title when I joined AWS, but I was a long-term MVP, 8 years on System Center and Azure. And being an MVP was super important for me because, communities are essential in today's world, and it's great to be part of it. I love to be part of this, and I'm still working actively in existing communities, but this time with my AWS title. So this is me in short. I'm based in London and traveling all around the EMEA quite often, and that's it. But to be honest, I know PeakUp for years. You guys are doing great stuff, and also we have done projects before, right? And but I also know that you guys change a lot. It's not the same PeakUp as before. You guys are growing, expanding your cloud business. So if you don't mind, I would like to take this opportunity, this podcast, to learn more about your team and your approach around, .NET and .NET Core development. So maybe KadirCan, you can introduce yourself and also tell us what you guys are doing as of today.
Thank you so much, Anil. I'm Toprakci. As I mentioned before, I'm the Chief Operations Officer at PeakUp. So we are basically doing cloud technologies around AWS, Microsoft, and so on. So our basic approach to the technology perspective is infrastructure layer to application development. So you can think us about doing some consultancy services around infrastructure layer, as you mentioned, System Center and Active Directory like services, and top on that we add our own SaaS applications as a .NET based or .NET Core based applications. And our pure approach is mainly developing our own SaaS applications, but in time to time we develop custom applications for our customers. Maybe we will talk about a little bit for app modernization in that side. And the last part is AI and data. So we developed the reporting capabilities in our back, and we gave some advanced reporting capabilities to our customers in our reporting layer. So it's a quick introduction on our side, and I guess we can skip the introduction part and deep dive into some technology-based speech as we promised to everyone in this podcast. So what do you think?
PeakUp is also an AWS partner, right? So you guys are working with AWS services as well, correct?
Yeah, right. It's a new thing for us, but we're very happy to work with AWS. So it gives us flexibility about deep technologies for both Microsoft and open source layer. So it's opened our minds in the new area of cloud technologies. So we are now platform agnostic, and that's why we are strong on the application development side. So it will be getting deeper and deeper in time, but we are very glad to be in this ecosystem on your side.
Great, cool. So I also would like to listen, what you guys are doing with the AWS services from developer standpoint. So maybe Emrah can talk about more, what services you guys are working with on the AWS side from developer standpoint.
Yeah, we develop web applications, so we choose a deployment option, Beanstalk, and by the way, we use the S3 to manage the images in our web applications. Serverless is a very trendy topic in cloud technologies. The Lambda is the common service that we use in AWS.
Right.
Yeah, and then many of our applications we should use EC2 instances for some of our customers, and we are also using some of the IoT services in AWS provides in a couple of our IoT projects. We are about 12 people in our development team, and 4 of them are backend developers, and they all use AWS services, especially platform as a service, and 2 of them are front end, and we have 3 IoT developers. IoT is a very important part of our development environment. We also have a Dynamics CRM and hybrid mobile application developers. That's all. And we also use .NET Core for our backend services. Of course, we have some legacy applications. We still have legacy applications which runs on a traditional .NET framework, but we try to modernize all of them to .NET Core and other new stuff. We use Angular, Vue, React, and TypeScript for the front end. And the last things that I can say, the migrating our customers developer topology or services from the .NET framework, traditional .NET framework to .NET Core is main part of our job today's job.
Wow, that's my favorite topic actually, .NET to .NET Core migration. But before diving into this, yeah, I mean this is great. Those are some of our popular services, especially within the developer communities, right? Beanstalk is a great way for developers to deploy and scale web applications, including .NET. And they can simply upload the code, and Beanstalk will simply handle the deployment and auto-scaling, load balancing, and health monitoring. This is great because developer can now focus on the application itself instead of spending time with the infrastructure. And Lambda, as you said, is our serverless computing platform. It's quite trendy, and it simply lets you to run code without provisioning or managing the servers. But yeah, my favorite topic is .NET to .NET Core migration. It's great that PeakUp is also taking some actions here because in AWS we are also working with our customers in their cloud journey, and sometimes .NET to .NET Core migration is also a crucial part of this journey because they struggle with the monolithic approach. They do have traditional .NET framework which is not architected with the cloud mindset. So we are also working with our customers to transition them into the cloud-ready model by refactoring the application. And .NET Core transition is part of it because with .NET Core, now developer can run the application on cross-platform, which provides access to bunch of different platform options in the cloud, such as AWS ECS or AWS Fargate, which is our container platform, or even Lambda, right, serverless computing platform, which runs your .NET Core code as a function. But I'm not a developer, so this is a disclaimer. I'm just an infrastructure guy and doing some PowerShell and DevOps. So it would be great to listen this story from you guys. So what do you guys think about .NET Core, and why do you think it is important?
I guess I'm the one to answer that. In my opinion, the .NET Core is the pinnacle of what that .NET can be as a vision. It's cross-platform, which .NET was never been before, sort of. There was mono and still is, but the underlying work was different from each other because, pattern issues. I think this caused inconsistent performance and some compatibility problems. Other than that, it's much more modular, much more versatile, and much more content resource-wise than its predecessor. Most importantly, it's open source. This opens up a lot of things, such as more community support, much more stable and featureful releases, because everyone can take a look at what's under the hood and point out what's wrong and what can be done to make it better. Essentially have an impact on the future of .NET Core. Because at last, we are the ones using it, so that's why it's important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this cross-platform modular approach also helps us to develop our application for the cloud, right? So do you think .NET Core is important for cloud-native scalable applications?
Yeah, like I said, .NET Core is modular, like the applications and services must be if they want to run on a cloud environment and be scalable at the same time. So it creates a natural bond between the intent and the execution. There's also a big ecosystem around .NET who works on especially business-centric applications, which much of them are not cloud native and scalable at the moment. So .NET Core and the tooling of the cloud providers gives them the opportunity to make their applications cloud native and scalable using their existing know-how. So, which makes the .NET Core more important for the cloud users and the providers.
Yeah, good point. So actually, it would be great, Fatih, if you can simply talk about a brief history of .NET, because as I mentioned, I'm not a developer, but I know that .NET has been around for decades, and we have seen many enhancements and updates till today, and .NET Core is the latest one, right? So how do you see that from a developer standpoint? And then maybe we can jump into another discussion, how we encourage developers to use .NET and .NET Core on AWS. But first, let's sit in a brief history of the .NET from you.
Oh boy, of course. It's a long one, but here we go. There's a pretty good explanation, presentation about this subject called the History of .NET by Richard Campbell. It's about 1 hour long, and he not only talks about .NET but also talks about the Microsoft's history in general. So totally worth watching. But summarizing, 90s, Microsoft started to work on something called NGWS, Next Generation Windows Services, as a part of the .NET strategy, which it becomes the .NET framework in the coming years. I will try to not get into the details much, but there are 3 distinct solutions to specific problems that marks the beginning of the .NET, and every one of them has their own story to tell. First story is about runtime. At the time, Microsoft needed their development environments such as Visual C++, Visual Basic, and Fox Pro to use the same runtime, because when they changed or added something to Windows, teams working on those environments had to apply these changes into their runtime separately, so if they saw. That was a big problem because it was directly affecting the customers. So there has to be a common runtime that these environments can use, and with the works of many people, especially Brian Harris, the common language runtime was born. Second story is about programming languages. After the lawsuit with the Sun about Microsoft's use of Java in Visual J++, yeah, that was a thing. Anders Hasberg, which was working on the J++ at that time, set out to create a language with the knowledge about Java's underlying principles and the object-oriented mindset. That led us to a C-like language with object-oriented capabilities, which is C#. Third and the last story is about web. Scott Guthrie, when he was fresh out of university, lands a job at Microsoft and joins a team called Anti-Option Pack. They were implementing the next version of Active Server Pages, ASP, in iOS 4 at that time. After they shipped, the team took a couple of weeks off, and after it was the end of December, the Christmas time, so because of that it became a full month. All of the December, the team was on vacation. So Scott Guthrie didn't like that, wasn't pleased by this, because he's young, just got the job, and he doesn't want to sit around and do nothing for the whole month. He wanted something better than ASP, something that works on IIS and is object-oriented to its roots, because it would be much better alternative than the ASP has to offer as a programming model. So he works on it for a month and develops a prototype written in Java and calls it ASP+. All these works came together in time somehow at the Professional Developers Conference. It's called Build now. On July 2000, .NET Framework, Visual Studio.NET, C# and ASP Plus was announced that time. After 1 year, ASP Plus changed its name and became the ASP.NET as we know today. So that is how it all began. I really recommend to watch this video after this podcast. I guess we will put the description in the podcast description link. About the .NET Core site, why Microsoft came up with the .NET Core is they realized that the future is open source and cross-platform. So they rewrite their C# compiler from the ground up, called Uslu, using C#, and it's a part of Mono from the start, which means it's open source. After that, they wrote a cross-platform CLI, called it Core CLI, and then they took apart the .NET framework and rewrote a lot of things to make it compatible with Core CLI and created the .NET Core itself. They also ensured the compatibility of created libraries to run everywhere and every time, with putting a standard around what a current and future .NET platform can be, and it's called .NET Standard. And this is the state of the .NET now. So I want to ask, what .NET and .NET Core means to AWS? AWS can provide developers and applications in the .NET ecosystem. What can AWS do about that?
Well, thanks for the question, and first of all, thanks for the brief history. It wasn't a brief history, but yeah, it's great to hear, the whole journey.
That was brief. Believe me.
Yeah, and thanks for the question. So, when it comes to .NET on AWS story, there are bunch of things we can talk about. Because we have a huge ecosystem of .NET code samples, step-by-step guides, and blog content, .NET SDK, Visual Studio Toolkit, and integration. So I can start with, let's say, AWS SDK for .NET. For AWS services, you can find the .NET SDK, including EC2, DynamoDB, SD, and more. So you can simply, as a developer, .NET developer, you can simply get the .NET SDK from Nugget packages, right? Or you can download it as a MSI package and install it. So that's the first step for developers to start with .NET on AWS, I would say. But we also have a smooth integration from tooling perspective. So as a .NET developer, probably you guys have been using Visual Studio almost every day, right?
Yes,
correct?
yes.
And then maybe Visual Studio Team Services for collaboration. So those are the primary tool sets for .NET developers. In that case, AWS provides a smooth integration with the existing ecosystem. So we are not saying that, hey, .NET developer, if you would like to build something on AWS, you need to learn this and that and different tools. No, we are simply saying that you can still stay in your comfort zone and continue to use Visual Studio to start developing on AWS. So in that case, AWS provides AWS Toolkit for Visual Studio. That's actually a free extension, and I know you guys are also using it. It's a free extension for Visual Studio that you can simply, insert into the console, and it makes a lot easier for developers to develop and deploy .NET or .NET Core applications using AWS. So once you install the plugin, which is also available in Visual Studio Marketplace, on the left-hand side, within the Visual Studio, on the left-hand side, you can see all your AWS resources, right? For instance, S3 buckets, objects, RDS databases, and things like that. It's just like an Explorer, but it's not a read-only Explorer. You can also take an action from here. For instance, let's say you are developing a .NET application, right? And within the Visual Studio, and you need a SQL database. So you can simply click RDS within Visual Studio and create a managed SQL database in minutes. And once you have done your tests with the application and the database, you can also delete this database within the Visual Studio. This is really cool. And another important feature of the toolkit is the right-hand side, so that you can simply publish your applications to AWS platforms. So let's say you build an application, right, and you want this application to be run on, you mentioned Beanstalk, right? AWS Beanstalk, because as a developer, you don't want to deal with the infrastructure, and Beanstalk takes care of it. So you can simply right-click your application, .NET application, in Visual Studio, and publish it to Beanstalk with one single click. Then your application will be packaged, and according to the parameters you define for the Beanstalk, the whole environment will be created, and your application code will be uploaded to the AWS by the toolkit and Visual Studio. So this is just a one-time publishing, by the way. So you can also manage your updates, right? You can publish any change in your application to Beanstalk, and then thanks to Beanstalk, you can even say that, I want a blue-green deployment, right? So Beanstalk will create the same environment with a different URL so that you can run your tests. But the whole idea is you can do all this stuff within the Visual Studio without leaving your comfort zone or ecosystem. So this is why I strongly encourage every .NET developer to take a look at the plugin, because it makes a lot easier for you to start developing on AWS. And I mean, .NET is just an example here. So same story can be applied for .NET Core, right? You mentioned about it, Fatih. The same story can be applied for .NET Core as well. Within the Visual Studio, I can simply create a .NET Core application, let's say, which is designed to run on Linux containers. You know, it's just a one checkbox within Visual Studio, right? I can just create an application and say that, hey, I want this application to run on Linux containers. And then I can simply right-click it and publish it to AWS container services, such as ECS, Elastic Container Service, or Fargate, which is another container service, allows you to run containers without having to manage the servers. So, and plus, additionally, you can also, you know, right-click your application, .NET Core application, or .NET Core code, and convert it into a Lambda function within the Visual Studio. So this is just a tooling perspective, right? So from tooling perspective, we provide native extensions so that you can manage your cloud resources and publish your applications to Beanstalk, ECS, Fargate, or even Lambda, right? But this is cool, right? This is also the modernization story. I mean, you start with the VMs and then jump to the containers and jump to the serverless. I started to see this kind of approach from customers. They start with traditional VMs and monolithic traditional .NET application, and during their cloud journey they start looking for more agile and scalable options. So in that case, sometimes they go for containers, sometimes they go for serverless, sometimes they go for both, right? Some .NET applications running in containers managed by ECS and Fargate, and some event-driven .NET Core functions can be converted into the Lambda functions. And yeah, this is really cool. And the last phase, I'm just thinking, last phase maybe would be to start taking advantage of AI technologies and machine learning technologies AWS has to offer, right? Such as SageMaker, Transcribe, Poly, Lex, or Translate. So this is really cool stuff. I also would like to listen your experience here, but I just want to finish the .NET on AWS story here. We do also have some services like CodeStar and CodeBuild. Probably you guys also using it. So for instance, CodeStar allows you to quickly, you know, build and deploy applications on AWS. You can set up your entire continuous delivery toolchain in minutes, right? And CodeBuild is another fully managed build service, you know, that helps you to compile the source code and running the tests and produce software packages and things like that. So as of today, we do also have some cool story here. You can also develop, build, and deploy .NET Core applications with AWS CodeStar and AWS CodeBuild services. This is really cool. With AWS CodeBuild, you can deploy .NET Core application to EC2 and Lambda. And for the CodeStar, we have .NET Core application templates ready to use. So as of today, you can just start using CodeBuild and CodeStar for your .NET Core applications. So that's it. We also have AWS X-Ray, by the way, which is the AWS service that allows developers to analyze and debug the applications, especially the distributed microservices applications. Helps you to identify performance issues or errors. We also release AWS X-Ray support for .NET Core 2.0. So, I mean, in short, we do have a really good and compelling story here from tooling perspective, SDK perspective, and an integration perspective. But as I said, I also would like to learn your experiences here, guys, because you guys are working with customers every single day, and you are taking a monolithic, .NET traditional architecture and helping customer for their cloud journey, right? Moving them to the containers, moving them to the serverless, or transition the .NET to .NET Core, or making the application as a cloud native application. So, do you want to talk about it? Do you have any experiences with the customers?
We have a real world customer example, and before that I want to talk a little bit more for your talkings. When we decide to modernize a customer's web applications or services and move them to the cloud, we first analyze the software infrastructure, and we will need to determine whether the app requires re-architecting process, or it needs to be only partially modernized, or can be directly moved to the cloud as infrastructure as a service. And we always try to go with cloud native applications. And this migration approach typically targets modernizing mission critical applications. And at this level, we use platform as a services to move customers' apps to PaaS computing platforms. And we implement cloud native applications and microservices architecture to evolve applications with long-term agility and to scale to new limits. And this type of modernization usually requires architecting specifically for the cloud. New code often must be written, and especially when you move to the cloud native application and microservice based models. And this approach can help us, our customers, gain benefits that are difficult to achieve in your monolithic and on-premises application environment.
It's not an easy process, right? I mean, because you need to start with analyzing the application and maybe the dependencies, right, in order to move it to the .NET Core and the microservices. So this is why maybe customers should look for some experienced partners, right, like PeakUp, because you guys can help them during this journey to take a look at the application, analyze it, and maybe document the dependencies and find out which parts should be moved to the cloud, or which part should be moved to the containers or servers, correct?
Yeah, of course, Anil, you are totally right. As for the real-world customer example, as you asked, we implemented this kind of modernization process to one of the biggest e-commerce company of Turkey, and there were 3 apps in the software topology. And end-user app was developed by using ASP.NET MVC, and the second one, back-office web app, was developed by using ASP.NET Web Forms, and the third one was a WCF application, which is served as a web service for the web application. All these apps were based on the traditional .NET framework, and after the analysis run with business units and technical teams, in the modernization process, we realized there are lots of dependencies because of the monolithic structure of the software infrastructure. And scaling in the peak periods, such as public holidays or big campaigns, was a big problem for them. And the other problem we observed in the customer is the release process takes more than 3 months. And so we first converted their WCF, Windows Communication Foundation services, to a REST-based web APIs, which adopts microservice approach, and deploy this web service to the beanstalk in AWS. And to manage the product images, we used S3 cloud storage service in AWS. And it gives us a lot of flexibility, and also there was a separate cache server solution in the legacy application, so we used AWS Elastic Cache for the modernized app. And for the end user web app, we use containers as the deployment choice. And the last but not least, we use AWS Lambda to execute server functions in the cloud and expose a public shop API for products and inventory data. AWS Lambda is extremely cheap, really, and the customer pay only for the time the code runs and not for the hours they rented servers, on-premise servers. So that was a great app modernization and cloud migration experience for our team.
Yeah, that's a great story, yeah.
So it's great to chat with you guys about .NET Core, and what AWS offers to developers and the IT guys. So as you can see, there's a lot of technologies around .NET Core. So that's why we separate the sessions into each week. So you can jump into our Friday sessions after this session, beginning with the Friday 7th of September. So each session we cover one specific technology on AWS. to how you can work on AWS as a developer, and we believe that, as you mentioned before, Anil, community is essential part of the new era. So we believe that we can contribute to community to how you can develop your solutions with the live coding sessions. So
great, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So please stay tuned with us so you can join our CodeRunner series. So with that, thank you all. Thank you talking with us and in this podcast for an introduction purpose. So seeing you at the next session. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks, bye guys.
Bye.